From impeachments to inaugurations, if it's a political story, we are on the scene. The race for the White House is heating up.
We're beating Biden.
How dare he say that?
If it's breaking news, we're live with the latest coverage. From the White House, the State Department, and Capitol Hill, we know the issues, but above all, we know the players to bring you the latest in-depth analysis on all the key stories that we're covering. I'm Eric Ham. Join me from Washington here on Firstpost America. Hello and welcome to Firstpost America, your global pit stop for the latest news and headlines from the United States and around the world. I'm Eric Ham, coming to you live from the nation's capital of Washington, D.C. We'll get you a roundup of all the day's top stories, but first, let's take a look at the headlines. The United Kingdom's Foreign Secretary David Cameron meets former President Donald Trump in Florida. The two leaders are set to discuss the wars in Ukraine and Gaza. Turkey will place restrictions on a wide range of exports to Israel, including steel and jet fuel, until a ceasefire is declared in Gaza. Israel accuses Ankara of violating trade deals between the two countries. German Chancellor Olaf Scholz will visit China this weekend. The three-day trip includes talks with Chinese President Xi Jinping. This is the Chancellor's first visit to China since November of 2022. South Korean President Yoon Suk-yeol announces an investment of $7 billion in artificial intelligence as Seoul looks to regain a leading global position in cutting-edge semiconductor chips. And the death toll from the brutal heat wave now stands at more than 100 in Mali. The West African nation witnessed soaring temperatures for at least a month, with mercury peaking at an astounding 120 degrees Fahrenheit. We begin in the Middle East, where Hamas has rejected a ceasefire proposed by Israel at the peace talks that were held in Egypt's capital city of Cairo. Hamas officials say that Israel's proposal did not meet any of their criteria. The Cairo talks were moderated by the United States, Qatar, and Egypt. Hamas had demanded an immediate ceasefire and a complete troop withdrawal by Israel. They also sought the return of displaced Palestinians to their homes. However, Israel declined to withdraw its forces from Gaza and rejected a proposal for allowing the free movement of Palestinians within Gaza. Meanwhile, the United States has put forward a new ceasefire proposal calling for the release of 900 Palestinian prisoners being held in Israel in exchange for 40 Israeli hostages that are currently being held captive by Hamas. The United States says this would be part one of a three-stage ceasefire deal. Now, both Israel and Hamas say they will study Washington's proposal and provide a response in the coming days. The United States is working to secure a ceasefire as Israel prepares to undertake a massive operation in the city of Rafah. Israeli Prime Minister Benjamin Netanyahu says that the assault on Rafah is marked on his calendar. However, he would not specify the date of the operation.
Today, I received a detailed report on the talks in Cairo. We are constantly working to achieve our goals. First and foremost, the release of all our hostages and achieving a complete victory over Hamas. This victory requires entry into Rafah and the elimination of the terrorist battalions there. It will happen. There is a date.
Now, more than 1.5 million Palestinian refugees are already crammed in Rafah as Israel's operation looms.
I'll set up a tent and stay in it. Where will I sit there? You know how crowded it is. It's very hot. During the day it was scorching hot and at night it was freezing cold. How can we endure that? There is no water or anything. I can't eat like I used to. You know how it is in the tents. We're surrounded by strangers and our relatives aren't there to talk to. Everything's destroyed.
Already, Israeli troops have begun moving towards Rafah as military teams make their final preparations. Meanwhile, leaders from Australia, France, Egypt, and Jordan have warned Prime Minister Netanyahu of going forward with his offensive. Rafah remains the last refuge for Palestinians who have been displaced by relentless Israeli bombardment. However, Prime Minister Netanyahu says a victory over Hamas will only be possible when his troops enter Rafah. With barely any aid reaching these stranded Palestinians, an assault on Rafah would be a humanitarian catastrophe. And now in the United States, another day and another Donald Trump verbal attack on, you guessed it, migrants. The former president says he only wants immigrants from quote-unquote nice countries to come to the United States. During a fundraiser over the weekend, Trump expressed discontent over the lack of immigration from developed nations. The Republican presidential candidate considers Switzerland, Denmark, and Norway to be the nice countries. Donald Trump also said, quote, "People are coming from Yemen where they're blowing each other up all over the place," end quote. The ex-president further claimed that countries that are a disaster were sending their prisoners and criminals to America. Now, the demeaning and derogatory remarks are not new. In fact, just last week, he called migrants quote-unquote animals and not humans during an election rally. Trump has also repeatedly criticized President Joe Biden's migration policies. The influx of migrants has become one of the biggest issues that Donald Trump's re-election campaign, and he has blamed the Biden administration for failing to secure America's border, all the while pressuring the Speaker of the House, Mike Johnson, from refusing to bring a bipartisan immigration package that passed the Senate to the House floor for a vote. Now, just last week, Donald Trump made additional scathing attacks on President Biden and his immigration policies.
They're sending prisoners, murderers, drug dealers, mental patients, terrorists. The worst of every country is coming into our country now. They're coming from the Congo, Yemen, Somalia, Syria, all over the world. They're coming. They're country changing, country threatening, and they're country wrecking. They're destroying our country. They're destroying, we can drill and we can get the oil going, but this is a tough one. We're going to end up with the largest deportation in American history. We have no choice. Have no choice, right? Have no choice. We have no choice because that's not sustainable by any country.
Now, Donald Trump says that American democracy is in danger and that the future of the country depends on what happens in November. The former president also claimed that people are demanding a change in leadership.
Great honor that you're here. It's going to be a very spectacular evening, and people are just wanting change. The rich people want it, poor people want it, everybody wants change. Our country is really doing poorly. We're a laughing stock all over the world, and we're going to get that change very quickly of making America great again, and that's what's happened. We're going to make America great again. Everyone knows it. The election's going to be in now a little more than 6 months, and it's going to be the most important, I believe, election we've ever had. I think it's going to go down as the most important date in the history of our country. That's November 5th, will be the most important date in the history of our country. And thank you very much. Thank you very much for being here.
The twice impeached ex-president has already vowed to implement the largest deportation operation in American history if he wins in November. The question U.S. voters need to ask themselves is, will the deportation stop at illegal migrants? And staying in the United States, President Joe Biden is hosting Japanese Prime Minister Fumio Kishida as the two allies seek to boost defense and economic ties amid China's increasing influence in the Indo-Pacific, as well as North Korea's rising truculence. President Biden and Prime Minister Kishida will hold an official summit on Wednesday, which will focus on upgrading their defense partnership. The meeting will be followed by the first ever trilateral summit between President Biden, Prime Minister Kishida, and the Philippine President Ferdinand Marcos Jr. The Philippines is facing escalating maritime tensions with China in the disputed South China Sea. The three maritime democracies aim to put up a united front against Beijing's rising aggression in the region. Fumio Kishida is, in fact, the first Japanese prime minister since Shinzo Abe in 2015 to undertake a state visit to the United States. On Thursday, he will also become the only second Japanese leader to address a joint meeting of Congress. Japan is seeking to strengthen its deterrence in a challenging security environment while bolstering military ties with the United States. Prime Minister Kishida will also be emphasizing that Tokyo and Washington are now global partners working to maintain a rule-based international order, and that Japan is willing to take on a greater international role in security, space, and the global economy to help the United States. During the one-on-one meeting, President Biden and Prime Minister Kishida are expected to agree on a plan to modernize their military command structures. Currently, the United States stations 50,000 troops in Japan. New initiatives on co-production of weapons, possibly a new missile, and the repair and maintenance of American warships and other equipment in Japan will also be discussed. Japan's possible participation in the AUKUS security partnership could also be raised during the talks. Now, Kishida and Biden are also expected to confirm Japan's participation in NASA's Artemis Moon program. The Japanese Prime Minister, who has also been stung by a corruption scandal back home, is looking to shore up support with a successful U.S. visit ahead of a September leadership contest in his ruling Democratic Party. And moving to the eclipse mania in North America, more than 32 million people in the United States, Mexico, and Canada witnessed the total solar eclipse after 7 years. In Arkansas, hundreds of couples got hitched as the moon completely blocked the sun. And Niagara Falls got in on the action as well, as it is now featured in a new Guinness World Record. Our next report explains the cosmic event and how people celebrated the Great American Eclipse.
Millions of people across North America were left in awe by the total solar eclipse yesterday. The dazzling celestial show took place after a wait of 7 years. Sky gazers across the US, Mexico, and Canada watched in wonder as the day turned into night. Some of them even called the event the Great American Eclipse.
Oh my God, it was really amazing. It was an experience I've never felt before. When it got totally dark, I literally was like screaming the whole time. I actually cried a little tear or two, because it was like overwhelming. It was an amazing experience.
But what is the phenomenon behind this stunning celestial spectacle? A total solar eclipse occurs when the moon passes between the Earth and the Sun, blocking the latter's light completely. But just before that, the last bit of sunlight creates a diamond ring effect, leaving a ring of light around the moon's edge. According to NASA, this year the eclipse lasted between 3 to 4 minutes, giving people enough time to appreciate its beauty. Reports said more than 32 million people felt the stillness of twilight in the middle of the day. As the moon's shadow enveloped the sun, thousands donned solar-safe eyewear to immerse themselves in the darkness. In Mexico, crowds gathered in the beachside resort town of Mazatlan, which was the first major viewing spot for the eclipse this year. Meanwhile, the Niagara Falls in Canada's Ontario became a venue to break a Guinness World Record, with 309 people claiming the title for the largest group to wear solar costumes.
Number to beat was 287. That was set by China Life Insurance Company Limited, Guangdong branch in China on December 20th, 2020. I can tell the city of Niagara Falls, Ontario, that you have 309 people. And I can say that the city of Niagara Falls, you are new Guinness World Record. Wow.
The eclipse also brought a unique twist to matrimony. Hundreds of couples tied the knot when the moon completely enveloped the sun in the US state of Arkansas. Meanwhile, 22 pairs exchanged vows during the eclipse in Ohio. In New York, the Niagara Falls State Park became a stage for at least 2 weddings and 1 proposal.
Well, it was just that union between the sun and moon, bringing those two different things together and making something beautiful, I think in a lot of ways symbolizes relationships, engagement, and marriage. So it was just phenomenal to be able to do it here in such a beautiful natural place.
Scientists say humans were not the only ones to react to the total solar eclipse. Zookeepers observed unusual behavior in animals during the celestial event. In Texas, owls seem to be more active during the day, whereas chimpanzees were spotted patrolling the zoo premises. Moreover, some species of birds formed clusters as the cheetahs paced at the top of their grassy yard. According to NASA, the next total solar eclipse will take place in August 2026. However, its totality will be limited to Greenland, Iceland, Spain, Russia, and a small part of Portugal. Meanwhile, North America will not see a total solar eclipse for another 20 years. The celestial dance between the sun, moon, and the earth will only be observed by North America in the year 2044.
And finally, South Africa's government has proposed a unique but controversial plan to boost its economy by linking it to biodiversity. South Africa is home to roughly 80% of the world's wild rhinos, so the government is proposing selling powdered rhino horns to medical tourists from Asia. But the plan, which is out for public consultation, has left people divided. Critics are branding this as a crude form of extractive conservation that focuses on monetization and exploitation of wildlife. Our next report gets you all the details.
The national election in South Africa is less than 2 months away. A slowing economy, stagnant growth, and high unemployment are among the top concerns for the country's voters. So the Ramaphosa government is adopting a new approach to create jobs and boost growth by linking biodiversity to economy. How? Well, the South African government has proposed a strategy to extract more economic value from what it has in abundance: the country's wildlife, especially the rhinos. It has proposed selling powdered rhino horn to health tourists from Asia. The demand for rhino horn remains high in Asia, particularly in China. Rhino horn is made of keratin. It's the same protein that helps form human hair, nails, and skin. In traditional Chinese medicine, it is believed to be a cure for fevers, snake bites, and more recently, it has been proposed as a treatment for some forms of cancer. South Africa is home to roughly 80% of the world's wild rhinos, including some black rhinos which are classified as critically endangered. This 10-year plan is named the National Biodiversity Economy Strategy. It acknowledges international support for bans on rhino horn trade and elephant tusks, but says that South Africa must explore innovative approaches to domestic trade. The new strategy also pushes for a 6-fold increase in the consumption and export of game meat, including antelopes, zebra, crocodile, and other exotic meat. It also includes the expansion of game ranches and hunting on communal and traditionally held lands. Another goal is to enable black communities to benefit economically, those who had been historically excluded from white-dominated wildlife and conservation industries. The plan has been approved by South Africa's cabinet, but it has left the citizens divided. It is out for public consultation before implementation. Even South Africa's Environment Minister conceded that the country's position that rhino horn had no medicinal properties and its proposal to market it for medical tourism was contradictory. Critics are branding this plan as a crude form of extractive conservation, focusing on monetization and consequent exploitation of wildlife. They say it applies a farming ethic to wild animals. They also say consumptive use and game hunting risks permitting poaching to be laundered within the legal framework. Defending the plan, South Africa's President Cyril Ramaphosa said national treasures in poor rural areas were like Rembrandts lying in the attic. He added that they needed to be brought back to life and the residual capital needs to be utilized. Earlier, the government gave the public until March 22nd to respond to its plan. The deadline has now been extended to April 12th.
That's our show for today. We certainly thank you for tuning in. We hope to see you right back here again tomorrow. Thanks so much again for watching. From impeachments to inaugurations, if it's a political story, we are on the scene. The race for the White House is heating up.
We're beating Biden.
How dare he say that?
If it's breaking news, we're live with the latest coverage. From the White House, the State Department, and Capitol Hill, we know the issues, but above all, we know the players to bring you the latest in-depth analysis on all the key stories that we're covering. I'm Eric Ham. Join me from Washington here on First Post America.